Hey guys, just waiting for a couple more people to join. We're here with Oscar winning screenwriter of the movie Milk, one of my absolute favorite movies ever. And before he gets started at this Out for Harris event, we are here in Arizona, the battleground state of Arizona, trying to encourage people to vote, to pull people over the line, to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Again, we're here with Oscar winner Dustin Lamb. Speak with him briefly about his experience. I think I've shared with you guys some of my experiences when I went to university in Idaho and played volleyball. Um, do you want to speak to some of your experiences in Utah and the process of self actualizing and coming out?
Sure. I mean, we were military Mormons. So I was mostly in Texas and a little bit of California, a lot of family in Utah. Um, and it is not a simple thing to explain
It is not.
because Mormon culture is so incredibly warm and family oriented. And in many ways, I still am that. I believe deeply we should be kind to our neighbor. I personally really value family. I've got my own now, and understand the importance of protecting that. So, in some ways, I'm still very aligned with Mormon folks, which is partly what brings me to
They're
Arizona.
socialists. They're almost communists in a way, right?
There's the beehive, right? And you see that when you go to Salt Lake City. And that was necessary for survival in some ways. And so, I, as a gay dad, I feel like I can relate even better to some of my Mormon family members when they talk about protecting the family. I just want to make sure that we're protecting everyone's family equally. And frankly,
Amen.
that's an argument that is resonating with Mormons. Now that we've done the hard work in Utah and beyond with the Mormon Church to introduce ourselves, to start making some progress, we're not anywhere near where we need to be, but we've made so much progress with the church. Um, so much progress that I think that it's fruitful to come to Arizona where there's 500,000 active Mormons who are voting and to say if being kind to your neighbor is important, if protecting everyone's family and protecting kids is important, if having that Mormon spirit of love and kindness is important, I actually think there's only one choice on the ballot, and that's to vote for Kamala Harris. And you might not, as she will tell you, agree with her on every position. But in terms of love and support and community and kindness and family, her opposition would be an absolute disaster. The example set by her opposition of what a citizen uh, ought to behave like and how they ought to speak about their fellow Americans, that sets a terrible example. That is absolutely un-Mormon. And so, we're coming out here to talk to Arizonans because it is a swing state. But in particular, we're coming out here to knock on doors of some Mormon faithful and saying, I think it's time to open all of our eyes. And though Mormons don't traditionally vote for Democrats, in this case, the Democrats are closer aligned to Mormondom than the Republicans this year. And it's time to open your eyes and to see that and to realize that, to feel that, to activate, and to protect all of our families by voting for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, Obama said last night at the rally in Tucson, it comes down to character,
Yeah.
right? And that is something that's very important to the Mormon community, right? Is character, being a good person in general, being good to your neighbor, like you said.
Well, I mean, I think character is incredibly important because it sets an example. And I remember growing up as a kid and looking at the leaders that, uh, you know, folks elected before I could even vote, and I would glean how I was supposed to be in our community, in our country, and absolutely, uh, Donald Trump sets the wrong example in the words he uses about his fellow Americans, about his neighbors, about people living here, simply because he's too fragile to take criticism. He's too fragile to be inclusive. He's too fragile and closed-minded to accept others. Not just despite difference, but understanding the value of that difference. So you know, I think character matters, but also policy matters. And when you look at
Amen.
the policy differences between mass deportation, which there is no version of Christianity that believes immigrants ought to be treated the way Donald Trump talks about immigrants. That should be disqualifying for him in the minds and the hearts of Christians everywhere. That alone. And then you get into the policies um, that he has of taking away some of the safety nets that we have socially, like Social Security, like Medicare, like Medicaid, like the Affordable Care Act, starting to take away things that people need in order to protect themselves, to protect their families, to be healthy, to raise healthy families. How on earth is this American? How on earth is this Christian? And it's certainly not Mormon. So we're going to knock on some doors and we're going to have these conversations with some Christian Mormon faithfuls here in Arizona and see if we can't get them to vote, really, frankly, in the interest of the church.
Amen. I could not. You said it's. What a beautiful way. Again, this is Dustin Lance Black, Oscar-winning screenwriter of the film Milk. We're at an Out for Harris event. It is Phoenix Pride weekend. I'll be going from event to event. Like Dustin said, he's going to be knocking on doors. I was canvassing last weekend and trying to pull as many people over the line as possible with just simple, honest conversations. Right? It's an honest conversation.
I mean, and it's not difficult this year because the distinctions are clear. I don't know who these undecided voters are because the distinctions are so incredibly clear. But if we can help, uh, not just change minds, that's a difficult thing to do. But let's hope we can do that. But if we can actually motivate people who are going to sit on the sidelines because they don't like their choice in the Republican Party, if we can motivate them to vote for someone who I think probably actually represents their interests better. If that simple conversation can create that motivation, boy, we got that kind of work to do here. Because if we win Arizona, the chances of winning the White House improve greatly. And I think we're close, and I think we can do it.
Amen. And I think Obama, another thing he said last night is like, we don't have to agree on everything, right? We don't have to agree on every issue, but we should agree that everyone should be able to make decisions for themselves, right?
I mean, this is basic stuff. I have a son in first grade, and they teach them in first grade. You're not going to agree about everything. You're going to have disagreements that you can talk about, that you can live with differing views of things. That's first grade shit, man.
It truly
like
is.
like and I'm so glad the president spoke to that. Those who are looking to vote for candidates who are 100% on their side on every issue, you're dreaming. Good luck. That's not the way it works. That's incredibly, I would say, juvenile. Except my son seems to understand this better than some of the voters out there today.
And that is something that's just, when you get into a group, a high control group, as I like to call them, when you are required to agree on 100% of the issues, you're in dangerous territory.
Yeah, it's just not, it's not realistic. I can, to be fair, remember a time in my sort of very activist teenage years where I felt passionately that folks had to agree on every point. But you grow up and you start to see that there's a path towards the place you want to arrive at, and you have choices when it comes to elections. And when you look at the choices on that ballot, there's most certainly in this case one that's going to take you toward that path, towards that end destination. Vote in that way. Vote for the person whose beliefs and policies and abilities get us closer to that end goal. For me, that end goal is about justice for all, and equality for all, and opportunity for all. Um, and there's only one candidate who even
And I always like to
speaks to that.
remind people the liberal agenda is not about changing hearts and minds, right? It's this idea that the same way I fervently fight for freedom of religion, right? I lived in Idaho for 5 years, that I fight for Mormons to have the right to
Sure.
to practice their faith, right? It's the same way that I would just like the right to make decisions about, say, my body or, who I marry and who I love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's we absolutely as we come to understand how much better and more livable and more exciting life is with diversity, with differing opinions, with different cultures, with people praying to different gods. Life is far more interesting with variety. So those who want everyone to be one thing that looks very much like themselves or what they aspire to be,
Homogenous.
oh my God, what a boring fucking world that
Right,
would
that
be.
was a milk joke
Yeah,
for you.
there you go.
Again, we're with Dustin Lance Black, Oscar-winning film writer, Oscar-winning writer of the film Milk. We're talking about where pride, gay rights, and the Mormon culture intersect, and we share similar backgrounds and knowledge on that.
Listen, I think for one reason alone, queer people and Mormons ought to get along, and that is we love some ballroom dancing on a
Amen. And
weekend,
singing, it's a
and
karaoke.
singing
Amen.
and musicals, and there's a lot about the Mormon faith that gets along quite well with gay
Dancing
people
with
if
the
they just
Stars.
gave if we just gave each other a chance. So
That's so true. Thank you
yeah,
so
no
much for
problem.
taking time. Dustin's going to be inside in a minute speaking. I'll be live streaming everything. I'm going to stop this live and restart back inside when I get set. But we just wanted to take a minute and talk to you guys. I'll be filming events for Pride Weekend out for Harris all weekend